Have you ever noticed how some people seem to command an almost magnetic respect without having to lift a finger to please anyone? They don't offer to help all the time. They don't try to solve other people's problems. They simply protect themselves. And suddenly, everything changes. The energy shifts. People start seeking their approval, valuing every word they say, feeling their presence. Now imagine if you did the same. If you stopped anticipating other people's needs, if you chose no instead of automatic help, boundaries instead of uncontrolled giving, what do you think would happen? This is where the core point lies. When you stop being excessively generous, emotionally, financially, psychologically, the world around you goes into crisis. Not because they miss you as a person, but because they're used to controlling you through your kindness, through your need to be useful, through your predictability in always saying yes. But the day you choose to turn off the faucet of giving, the game changes, and those who thought they loved you realize they only loved what you provided. Carl Jung said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." But in your case, there is no transformation. There is only consumption. You are being consumed. Now think about this. When you become unavailable and stop giving, who actually becomes desperate? Who gets irritated? Who tries to make you feel guilty or selfish? That reveals more about them than about you. And it reveals, above all, how much you are still being manipulated without realizing it. You keep giving to please, to keep the peace, to avoid losing people who, deep down, were never truly with you. And with every forced act of help, with every problem you carry on your back for others, with every time you place someone else's needs above your own, you give away a piece of your vital energy. And at the end of the day, what's left? Exhaustion, frustration, and an emptiness you can't explain. But I'll tell you why. It's because you are far too available, offering treasures to people who don't even deserve your crumbs. The curse of being too nice. This video is not about becoming cold, selfish, or heartless. It's about choosing yourself. It's about learning what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole, authentic, complete. And that process begins when you understand that saying no can be a far greater act of love than an automatic yes. That closing your hand at times is the only way to save yourself. So I ask you now, looking you straight in the eyes, how long are you going to believe that you need to buy your place in people's lives? How long will you keep acting like a martyr every time someone tells you a sad story? Maybe it's time to cut these strings, to stop trying to save the world and start saving yourself. Because when you stop giving excessively, everything changes. You were taught to always be nice, to share everything, to put other people's needs ahead of your own. Since childhood, you were conditioned to believe that your value lies in how useful you are, that in order to be loved, you must serve. But here is a truth that maybe no one has ever told you this clearly. This excessive generosity is not a sanctified virtue. It is a neurotic prison. And as long as you keep believing that you must solve everyone's problems, financial, emotional, or practical, you will be manipulated, drained, and forgotten the moment you have nothing left to offer. Do you know why? Because being the universal giver makes you predictable, and everything that is predictable becomes a tool. People start using you as a psychological crutch or an emotional ATM. They come to you when they want relief, money, advice, or validation, and then they put you back on the shelf. But you don't notice it because you're trapped in an illusion. The illusion that if you take care of everyone, someone, someday, will take care of you. But it doesn't work that way. Carl Jung spoke about the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted, loved, recognized by society. And it's exactly this savior or generous person mask that keeps you trapped. You say, "I can help," when you're actually exhausted. You lend money that you'll miss in your own account. You listen to other people's drama while swallowing your own tears. You justify yourself as if you owed the world something. But the truth is, the more you place yourself at the center of other people's stage to fix their lives, the more you disappear from your own. Giving yourself away all the time is a subtle form of self-abandonment. It's a disguised way of begging for approval, of avoiding rejection at all costs, trying to control how others see you through your usefulness. Psychic economy, the invisible cost of sacrifice. All the help you give, all the time you spend solving crises that aren't yours, none of it is free. There is a cost accounting your mind keeps, even if you're not aware of it. Jung saw the mind as a closed energy system. Every time you sacrifice yourself for someone who wouldn't do the same for you, you're not just being nice, you're making a transfer of funds from your soul into a void. The price of the control you try to exercise, the control of being loved through giving, is your peace. You distribute your vital energy as if it were infinite, when in reality it is the most limited resource you possess. Stop and observe. The people who demand that you always be available don't want you. They want what you provide: validation, money, time, emotional comfort. And the cruelest part is this: the more you give, the less value you have. What is too abundant becomes invisible. No one respects what they don't have to earn. No one values what is always there, guaranteed and free. Jung was clear in saying that what you resist persists. But there's an addition to that. What you feed without discernment devours you. If you feed other people's dependence, you starve inside. Emotionally exhausted people are not necessarily weak. They are simply misdirected. They are trying to keep lights on in houses that aren't theirs, while their own house remains in the dark. Have you ever lost sleep trying to understand how someone could be so ungrateful after everything you did for them? That feeling of injustice is your psyche screaming that the energy balance is in the red. You are keeping alive ghosts of gratitude that will never come, and sustaining dynamics that only survive because you keep paying the bill. Your psychic energy works like a force field. When you protect it and direct it toward your own projects and healing, you create a presence that commands respect. But when you disperse it to please everyone, you become porous, fragile, and invisible. The world has no mercy for those who give themselves entirely without first possessing themselves. Start observing your triggers. What makes you feel like you have to help? Is it guilt? Is it the fear of being seen as bad? These are the exact points where your soul is leaking. This is not about becoming indifferent, but about becoming sovereign. It's about understanding that your yes only has value if you have the courage to stand by your no. The shadow magnet. Why you attract those who drain you. Have you ever wondered why you seem to always attract the same kind of person? That friend who only calls to complain, the partner who never reciprocates the effort, or the family member who always needs a desperate favor. This isn't bad luck. It's a deep psychological mechanism. Jung said that we don't see things as they are, but as we are. And when you over-identify with the image of the good and charitable person, you project a silent invitation to the world for those who don't want to take responsibility for their own lives. Your limitless generosity works like a lighthouse for other people's shadows. Opportunistic and emotionally needy people can sense from afar who doesn't know how to protect their own energy. They perceive that you try to fix the world to avoid looking at your own emptiness, and they take advantage of it. They are not relating to you. They are relating to the ease you provide. Carl Jung called projection the mechanism through which people place onto others what they refuse to accept in themselves. The manipulator projects onto you the figure of the eternal provider, and you accept that role because you fear the darkness of being seen as selfish. You become a container for other people's unmet needs. But here is Jung's most painful revelation. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Your excessive kindness is often a form of disguised darkness. It is the fear of rejection dressed up as charity. When you take on the burden of someone who is perfectly capable of walking on their own, you are not helping them. You are preventing their growth and accelerating your own collapse. The manipulator doesn't need strength to control you. They only need to press the button of your guilt. And as long as you feel that you owe the world something in order to be worthy of love, you will remain easy prey. Your unavailability is a threat to these people because it forces them to look into their own abyss. When you stop giving, the mirror they admired themselves in shatters. Are you ready to face the discomfort of being the villain in the story of someone who only loved you while you were useful? Because it is exactly in that moment, when you stop being a resource and return to being a human, that the masks fall and true freedom begins. Sovereign silence, breaking the cycle of justification. We live in a world that demands immediate answers and constant justifications. If you can't help, you feel the need to give a full explanation as to why. If you say no, you feel like you have to apologize. But there is a power the great masters of the soul understand, and that you have forgotten, the power of silence that does not ask for permission. Not the silence of resentment, but the silence of sovereignty. For Jung, silence is the fertile ground where consciousness blooms. When you stop explaining yourself, you begin to observe, and by observing, you start to see the patterns that once went unnoticed. The emotional game, the subtle blackmail, the repetition of abuse. Your silence is dangerous to those who live off controlling you, because silence removes control of the narrative from their hands. Have you noticed how some people panic when you simply don't respond to an unreasonable request, or when you say no and don't offer an excuse afterward? That panic isn't concern or longing, it's the loss of power over you. As long as you speak, justify, and apologize, you're still playing their game. When you fall silent and hold your absence, you change the rules. True silence is not the absence of voice. It is mastery over your own energy. It is the refusal to be dragged into someone else's emotional courtroom, where you're judged solely by how useful you are. Jung said that individuation requires this distance because only in silence can you hear your own voice without the interference of the world's noise. But don't be mistaken, silence has a price. It will distance you from those who only valued you for what you provided. It will make you seem cold or arrogant to those who fed on your need to please. But all of this is merely the reaction of people who never wanted your depth, only your usefulness. A no without explanation is the shortest and most powerful sentence you can say. It separates those who respect your being from those who only use what you have. Sometimes your silence is not a retreat, it is your independence being declared. It is the language of someone who no longer needs to prove they are a good person in order to have the right to exist. Conscious unavailability, reclaiming the reins of the soul. There's no point in understanding all of this intellectually if, the moment the phone rings or someone asks you for a favor that overwhelms you, you still say yes with your mouth and no with your soul. Awareness without action is just a refined form of self-deception. Real transformation begins when you decide, firmly and calmly, to become selective. Conscious unavailability is not about being cruel or indifferent. It's about no longer being accessible to anyone at any time, for any reason. It's about taking ownership of your time, your money, and above all, your peace. And it starts with small cuts, not responding immediately, breathing before offering to fix a problem that isn't yours, walking away from a conversation where you're only being used as emotional trash. The hardest part is that you don't need, and you shouldn't, justify your absence. You owe no explanations for why you stopped carrying the world on your back. For many people, this will be unforgivable. Do you know why? Because when you stop explaining yourself, you take away their power to keep you trapped in a narrative where you are the eternal helper. Carl Jung understood that every process of individuation requires a period of isolation, not a depressive isolation, but a sacred one. A time of withdrawal in which you learn to hear your own voice without the noise of other people's demands. A time in which you rebuild your identity based on your own center, not on the gaze of those who need you. Want a true gauge of your growth? Observe who drifts away when you set boundaries. Observe who tries to provoke you or label you as changed or strange when you stop reacting. These are not signs that you're doing something wrong. They are proof that you've finally begun to break free. Being unavailable will cause discomfort. You'll feel guilt the first few times. You'll think you're being selfish because you spent your entire life conditioned to put yourself second. But that discomfort is the sign that your old version, the version enslaved to other people's expectations, is dying so that something stronger can be born. The solitude of the strong and the rebirth of your being. When you finally stop giving to those who only know how to drain you, something profound happens. First comes silence, an uncomfortable silence that seems to scream inside you. You'll question whether you made the right choice, whether you're losing people who liked you. But little by little, that silence transforms. It begins to clear your vision, calm your chest, and heal your exhaustion. And then, solitude emerges, but not the loneliness of abandonment. It is the solitude of total presence, your own. It is the solitude of the strong, of those who no longer betray themselves just to keep someone close. In the space where confusion and need once lived, clarity now enters. Where there was anxiety for approval, there is the peace of someone who belongs to themselves. Carl Jung said that the process of becoming who you truly are requires distancing yourself from the collective, removing the mask, and walking alone for a while. And that is exactly what you do when you decide to become unavailable to abuse. You are not running away from the world. You are coming home. To yourself. The people who feel uncomfortable with your new posture reveal that they never truly loved you. They loved the role you played, the ease you brought into their lives. And losing these people is not a loss, it is a release. You may lose shallow connections, but you will find your essence. From this point on, you stop being a reactor to other people's needs and become the creator of your own reality. You stop being shaped by expectations and begin shaping your life from your own center. When you are no longer available for emotional crumbs, you become rare. You become valuable. This is a rebirth. It is the beginning of a life where your self-love is no longer negotiable. You now only accept what resonates with your peace and your integrity. Because being loved by others means nothing if, to achieve it, you have to abandon yourself. If you made it this far, it's because a part of you is already ready for this new path. If you've decided that your time of being used is over, write in the comments, "I choose my peace." Let's see how many here are ready for this transition. And don't forget, keep protecting your light, because now you know it isn't for just anyone. See you in the next video.